Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
The G7 Foreign Ministers Summit is underway in Quebec, where we find our colleague, Bloomberg's David Gura, who is joined there live by Kaja Kallas, Vice President of the European Commission and High Representative of the EU for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. David.
Well, thanks to both of you, and I do have the EU's top diplomat here with me, and I want to start with the news of the day, and certainly what's on the agenda here at this conference as well. That is what happens with Ukraine, and my understanding is during the morning session, word came out that President Putin had responded to what occurred in Saudi Arabia a few days ago. Can you just describe your reaction to that news? The ball is in Russia's court, and President Putin evidently is eager to talk to President Trump.
Well, the ball is in Russia's court, and of course we are all very much looking forward to how they react. Either they say yes with no conditions, no with no conditions, or yes with conditions. I would bet on the yes with conditions, and then the question is, what are these conditions? What we heard from the media, these conditions are of course not acceptable. I mean, that there would be no military aid to Ukraine. I think there was something else. It's not the conditions that we can live with.
Have you been briefed directly by the Secretary of State, by Marco Rubio, about conversations that are taking place in Russia between Steve Witkoff, the president's envoy, and President Putin and his team?
Yes, Secretary of State Marco Rubio briefed us what was the case in Saudi Arabia. Witkoff is traveling to Moscow and the talks there. So yes, they're keeping us informed, and also promised to not agree to any conditions that we wouldn't agree. That we definitely have to talk to each other before anything moves forward further.
Is there any update on what European nations want? That is the security guarantee for Ukraine. And if they aren't in place, do you have much faith or confidence that Russia would uphold its end of the deal if, in fact, there is one?
Well, that is always the question, because we have seen the ceasefires before, and Russia has never kept to those agreements. So that's why I think the best security guarantee, or the first security guarantee that there is a strong Ukrainian army. That's why we are also arming and helping Ukraine to defend itself. I mean, we need to work with that. We don't have any guarantees from Russia's side that they are intending to keep those agreements. But of course, right now, the ball is in Russia's court to show goodwill. They could start with, giving back the children that have been deported to Russia. They could start with releasing the prisoners of war. They could start with many elements to show their goodwill, really.
You said from the get-go that Europe had to have a seat at the table for these conversations about a deal. Are you being briefed regularly? Do you feel involved in this process? Are you satisfactorily involved with how it's playing out?
Well, any deal without us can't just simply work, because the war is in European soil, and it needs Ukraine and also Europe to agree to any kind of conditions that we have to implement, or any kind of deal that we have to implement. That gives us the seat around the table.
I want to ask you just about the quality of conversation that you're having with your counterpart from the United States. You traveled to Washington. We're supposed to meet with him. Calendar issue, that didn't happen. Are there plans for the two of you to have a bilateral meeting to meet one-on-one here in Quebec?
Well, we met all the breaks we discussed, and all these conversations that we have inside the room are very, very friendly, and really addressing the issues that we need to work together on the Middle East, when it comes to Africa, when it comes to different parts of the world. So these interactions are actually very, very positive. I also extended a standing invitation to Marco Rubio to come to the Foreign Affairs Council that we have every month, where we could have the discussion with the 27 foreign ministers of Europe.
He's interested.
He's looking into the dates.
I want to ask you about the trade war, which is not an agenda item here, but is certainly the backdrop to all of the conversations that are taking place here. It's something that you said that you wanted to avoid early on, and now we aren't just in the middle of one, but it's escalating quite quickly. We heard from the President of the United States today that he intends to tariff champagne and French wine at 200%. Your response to the speed with which this has happened, and also how it's been ratcheted up?
Well, of course, like I said before, I mean, we are not interested in trade wars. There are no winners in trade wars. Who is laughing on the side or looking at the side is China, who is really benefiting from, U.S. having a trade war with Europe. But it is also clear that if these tariffs are put on us, then we are also defending our interests. But like I say, in the end, eventually the consumers get to pay higher prices, and that is not in the interest of anybody. So we really try to avoid these things, but of course we see this news coming all the time. I think right now it's important to keep cool heads because we see the statements, and then what really matters is the actual steps, the legal acts that are done, and then we are also ready to react.
A stupid question or a basic one, but are you confident you know what the U.S. wants when it comes to this trade war? As you watch all of these salvos and escalations, do you know what you could do or might do to appease the President of the United States and end the war that started a few weeks ago?
Well, of course, you have to ask the President of the United States what is their goal regarding this. But what they have been or what they have been saying out is that there is a trade deficit between our countries. It is of course not that big, and we can address this in a different way. But it is how it is. Like I say, we keep a cool head, and of course we are ready to act and defend our interests when we need to.
Your focus, of course, has been on the proceedings here, but in Germany, the parliament is debating a spending package and spending more money on defense. That country is in a unique position to do that. Is there more that the EU could do to help other countries that don't have the same kind of fiscal bandwidth that Germany does to defend themselves?
Well, we came with the proposal that has several elements, how to find the funding to increase defense spending, because it is clear that we need to invest more in defense. There are different elements. They were presented last week, but I think also very important part is how to open really the private funds also for defense spending. And there, I think key is also the European Investment Bank changing its rules, because it's also an example for any kind of other bank to not put the defense investments in the same pocket as gambling, for example, which is not good for bankable investments. So I think these are good steps, but we need to move much faster. That is very clear, and will is there.
I note your sartorial signifier. You're wearing red with a maple leaf. Your German counterpart also expressing her solidarity with the Canadians, who, of course, are the subject of this trade war as well. What message are you trying to send, yes, by doing that, but also here in conversation with your colleagues from the G7?
Well, Canada is our good partner, and we are here in this wonderful place in Canada. So of course, we have very good relationship and friendship with Canada. So I think this is important that we are in this together when it comes to different wars and conflicts around the world, but when it also comes to economic security. We need to be there for each other.
I imagine that there is an element of this that's disorienting. This is a group of allies, and you have one now who's not waging a shooting war against other members of this multilateral institution, but is waging a war, is waging a trade war. How do you think about that and the notion of allies and the way that nations outside of the U.S. are kind of coalescing with each other in opposition to the U.S. here?
I think the key for us is our strength is in unity. And of course, our adversaries want to see the divisions between the long-standing allies as we are, because that makes them stronger and that makes us weaker. We have to keep this in mind all the time and really work with that unity. We might have disagreements on different issues because we are all democracies and coming from our domestic politics here, but at the same time we have a lot of issues where we agree, so we focus on those what we can do more.
I don't need to put too fine a point on it, but this was once the G8, now it's the G7. Do you worry about the integrity of this institution going forward, if it winnowing even more? talked a lot about alliances and allies and kind of growing that or strengthening that going forward. Is this an institution that you worry about in light of what's happened over the last few weeks?
I mean, we have had extremely good meetings today, and we're going to have meetings tomorrow. So in the light of this, I'm not worried.
Very quickly here, we've heard a lot about the communique, what might come together. Are you optimistic that there will be some agreement here? Are the quibbles over language such that you don't think that's going to happen? How optimistic are you that from this meeting will be born a statement of purpose from all of you going forward?
Yes, so we are still working on that, but I'm optimistic that we will reach an agreement.
Can you say what the sticking points are? Is it related to Ukraine and Russia? Is it related to the Middle East?
Well, the issues are there. It's the Middle East, it's Ukraine. I mean, the big topics that we discussed. And inside the room, actually, we are very much aligned on different issues. So I didn't really see very strong disagreements. But of course, when it comes to putting the words down on paper, then, there's a lot of details, really. And the devil is in the details.
Thank you very much for the time.
You.